Welcome to the deep dive. I love getting these source drops from you, and this one's a doozy about this group, Team Security or TSEC.
Yeah.
And I gotta admit, I hadn't heard of them before, but
Yeah.
digging into all this stuff, it's clear they're a pretty big deal, especially in Germany. So I'm really excited to kind of unpack all this and figure out what they're all about.
Yeah. Definitely a lot to unpack. They've been around for a while, which is always impressive in a field that moves as fast as cybersecurity. And yeah, you flagged some really interesting things here that I think are worth a closer look.
Yeah, well, to kick things off, one of the first things that jumped out at me on their website was they mentioned using over 700 sources for their news database, which apparently has something like 2 million entries.
Wow.
I mean, that's a massive amount of data. So what kind of sources are we even talking about here?
Yeah. It's a pretty diverse mix. And that's important because, you need that to get a full picture of what's going on in cybersecurity these days. So we're talking news sites, obviously, security blogs, academic research, even stuff like forum discussions and social media chatter.
Wow.
Really trying to capture it all.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess. But how do they make sense of it all? I mean, with so much information coming in constantly, how do they avoid just becoming, a giant, overwhelming data dump?
Right. Well, that's where the analysis comes in. You see,
Yeah.
it's not just about collecting all this data. It's about actually going through it and finding the patterns and the insights that matter. They actually compare themselves to curators, like a museum curator, filtering out the noise and highlighting the truly significant pieces.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I like that. So it's about quality, not just quantity.
Exactly.
Got it. Now, one thing you highlighted in your notes was that they're pretty active on Reddit. Specifically in this German cybersecurity community. What's significance of that?
Well, I think it says a lot about their approach.
Yeah.
They're very community focused. They're not just some isolated research group. They're actually out there engaging with real people who are on the front lines of cybersecurity. Sharing their knowledge and insights and getting feedback.
Yeah, and that's interesting because so many of the cybersecurity companies I see these days, it's all about selling you a product or a service, whereas TSEC seems to be much more focused on awareness and education, almost like a public service.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation.
Yeah.
You can definitely get that sense from their website and their materials. They're trying to kind of demystify cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Make it accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Not just the tech specialists.
And that ties into what we see in this Über uns Texterstellen.pdf document you sent over. They cover like a huge range of topics like classical IT security, cybersecurity operating systems, data protection, AI hacking trends. It's a lot.
It is.
It's really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it shows you how broadly they're thinking about cybersecurity. It touches on so many aspects of our digital lives these days.
Yeah.
It's not just about protecting computers anymore. It's about protecting people,
Yeah.
their data, their privacy.
Okay, so speaking of privacy, there's this term that I saw in this document that I got to ask you about, Überwachung TSE, which I gather means surveillance TSEC in German.
Yeah.
It sounds a little ominous, I got to say.
It does, doesn't it?
What's the deal with that?
Well, based on the context, it seems to be like a specific focus area within their research and their news database. Maybe it refers to like the surveillance technologies that governments and corporations are using, or even the ways that hackers use surveillance to target individuals.
So they're not just looking at how to protect ourselves, but also at how surveillance itself is evolving in the digital age.
Exactly.
Which, given all the concerns about data privacy these days, I think that makes their work even more relevant.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding how surveillance works, both the legitimate stuff and the malicious stuff is crucial for developing, effective countermeasures and protecting our digital rights.
Okay, so one thing that really jumped out at me was they're really big on delivering IT news updates every 15 minutes. I mean, who needs updates that frequently? Doesn't that just create information overload?
It does sound a little excessive.
I know.
But I think it speaks to how quickly things change in cybersecurity. New threats and vulnerabilities, they pop up all the time. So think about it. If a major exploit is discovered, knowing about it, as soon as possible could be the difference between, being a victim and staying safe.
Yeah, that's true. So they're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Giving people the latest information so they can react quickly.
Precisely. It's about having that timely intelligence.
Yeah.
So people can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
Because the landscape is always changing.
So it's not about knowing what happened yesterday. It's about knowing what's happening right now.
Right now.
This very minute.
Exactly. And it really highlights the importance of proactive cybersecurity. It's not enough to just react to threats after they've already happened.
Yeah.
You got to be constantly vigilant, monitoring the latest developments and adapting your defenses.
I'm getting the sense that TSEC is really trying to change the game here. They're not just another cybersecurity company offering, a product or a service. They're trying to change the way we think about digital safety.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful observation. They're definitely advocating for a more proactive and informed approach, one that empowers individuals and fosters a culture of awareness.
That's a pretty ambitious goal.
It is.
But do they actually have the resources and the reach to make a difference? I mean, cybersecurity is a global issue. And so far, we've mostly been talking about their presence in Germany.
That's a great question. And it's one that I think leads us to the next layer of this deep dive.
Okay.
Most of the information we have does seem to focus on their impact within Germany. But it is worth exploring, whether their reach extends beyond that.
So are they a primarily German phenomenon, or do they have aspirations and the potential to become a global force in cybersecurity? That's something I'm definitely curious to explore further.
Me too, and that's what we'll dig into after a quick break.
Sounds good. So we were just talking about TSEC's reach. Is there any evidence that they're actually operating outside of Germany?
Well, their main focus does seem to be on the German-speaking world.
Yeah.
But there are these hints that their work might have a broader impact. For instance, some of their research papers have been presented at international cybersecurity conferences.
Oh, interesting.
And they've been cited by experts from, various countries.
Right. So even if they're not actively promoting themselves globally, their insights and analysis could still be making their way into the wider cybersecurity community.
Exactly. Knowledge travels fast, especially in a field like cybersecurity, where collaboration is so important.
Okay, so maybe they're not a household name internationally yet, but their work could still be influencing the global conversation?
I think that's fair to say. Yeah, and it's also worth noting that their website and some of their materials are available in English.
Oh, really?
Which suggests, they're at least open to reaching a wider audience.
So they're not shutting the door on international collaboration or expansion.
Right.
Which, makes sense given their mission of raising awareness and promoting cybersecurity education.
Precisely. They seem to get that cybersecurity is a global challenge that needs a global response.
Now, you mentioned earlier that they're active in the German cybersecurity community on Reddit. Do they actually engage in discussions and answer questions from users?
Yeah, they do. And that's what makes their community engagement so interesting. They're not just, passively sharing links to their latest news updates.
Right.
They're actually participating in the conversation, providing their insights, even offering advice and answering questions.
So they're not just talking at people, they're talking with them.
Exactly.
Which is a much more effective way to build trust and credibility.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in a field like cybersecurity, where there's so much misinformation and so many scams out there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also curious about their stance on specific cybersecurity issues, like, for example, with all the talk about AI these days, both the promises and the potential threats. Has TSEC taken a position on how AI is impacting cybersecurity?
They have, and it's pretty nuanced. They acknowledge the potential benefits of AI and cybersecurity, like automating threat detection and response.
Right.
But they also highlight the risks, particularly the potential for AI to be used by malicious actors.
Right, to create even more sophisticated attacks.
Exactly.
So they're not blindly embracing AI as a silver bullet, but they're also not dismissing its potential.
Right. They're advocating for a balanced and cautious approach. One that recognizes both the opportunities and the challenges.
Yeah. That seems to be a recurring theme with TSEC, this balanced, thoughtful approach that emphasizes understanding the complexities of the issues.
It is.
Rather than offering, simplistic solutions.
Exactly. And I think that's what we all need to be doing in the digital age, thinking critically and making informed decisions.
Speaking of critical thinking, we haven't talked much about the Uber-watching TSEC term we saw in their document. Have you uncovered any more information about what that actually refers to?
I have. I've done some digging, and it seems to be a specific category within their news database and research that focuses on surveillance technologies and their impact on privacy.
So it's not just about the technical aspects of surveillance, but also about the broader societal implications?
Exactly. They're looking at how surveillance is being used by both governments and private companies. And and the potential risks to, individual rights and freedoms.
That's a really important area of focus, especially with all the growing concerns about data privacy and the erosion of digital rights, in many parts of the world.
Absolutely. And it highlights another aspect of TSEC's work that we haven't really touched on much.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Their commitment to ethical considerations in cybersecurity.
Right. It's not just about building stronger defenses. It's about making sure that those defenses are used responsibly and ethically.
Precisely. Cybersecurity isn't just a technical challenge. It's a social and ethical one. And TSEC really seems to get that.
One thing I'm realizing as we go deeper into this is that TSEC is more than just a cybersecurity organization. They're almost like a think tank, exploring the broader implications of technology on society.
I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, they're not just reacting to current threats. They're trying to anticipate future challenges and shape the conversation about how we use technology responsibly and securely.
That's an incredibly ambitious goal.
It is.
But are they actually having any real-world impact? I mean, have there been any studies or analyses that measure the effectiveness of their work?
That's a tough question to answer definitively.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure the direct impact of an organization like TSEC, especially since so much of their work is about raising awareness and educating individuals.
So it's not like they're releasing a product or service where you can track, sales or user adoption.
Right. Their impact is more diffuse, more about changing attitudes and behaviors over time.
But that doesn't mean it's not valuable.
No, not at all.
In fact, you could argue that changing hearts and minds is even more important in the long run than just building a better firewall.
I completely agree. Cybersecurity is ultimately about people making informed decisions and taking responsibility for their own digital safety.
And that's where TSEC's focus on education and awareness really comes in.
Exactly.
So while we might not be able to quantify their impact with hard data, we can definitely see the value in their approach.
Absolutely. They're contributing to a broader cultural shift towards a more security-conscious society.
That's a pretty significant contribution, especially given how much our lives depend on technology these days.
It is, and it raises a really interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
If TSEC is having such a positive impact in Germany, could their model be replicated in other parts of the world?
That's a fascinating thought. Could other countries or regions benefit from having their own version of TSEC? Tailored to their specific cultural and technological context.
It's definitely worth exploring, and it leads us to another key question.
Okay.
How is TSEC funded?
Right.
Are they a nonprofit? Do they get government support? Or are they privately funded?
That's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Understanding their funding model could shed some light on their sustainability and their potential for expansion.
Yeah, definitely something to look into.
All right, so we've been really getting into the nuts and bolts of team security. Their methods, their reach, and even their stance on the ethics of cybersecurity. But before the break, we were starting to talk about their funding model, like how do they actually keep the lights on and do this important work?
Yeah, that's always a key question for any organization, especially one that seems to really prioritize education and awareness over just making a profit. But luckily, their website actually gives us some clues about their funding structure.
Okay, so spill the beans. Are they a nonprofit? Are they swimming in government grants? Or are they backed by, some huge tech giant?
Well, it's actually pretty interesting. They have kind of a unique hybrid model. It turns out they do operate as a nonprofit, which lets them accept donations and grants, but they also generate some revenue through partnerships and specialized services for businesses.
So they're not completely reliant on philanthropy or government handouts. They've figured out how to balance their public service mission with, a sustainable business model.
Exactly. And I think this approach gives them a certain level of independence. They're not beholden to any single funding source, so they can really pursue their research and advocacy work with more freedom.
That makes a lot of sense. It allows them to stay objective and not be swayed by, the interests of any particular donor or investor.
Right. And it also speaks to their long-term vision. They're not just looking for a quick return on investment. They're building a sustainable organization that can keep contributing to the cybersecurity landscape for years to come.
Well, from what we've learned today, I'd say they're off to a pretty amazing start. I mean, they've been around for almost a decade. They've become a trusted voice in the German cybersecurity community, and their work is even getting recognized internationally.
Definitely. They've really carved out this unique space in the cybersecurity world. They're not just focusing on the technical side of defense. They're looking at the human element, the social and ethical dimensions, which are so often overlooked.
And they're doing it in a way that's really engaging and informative.
Yeah.
They're not just lecturing at people about the latest threats. They're inviting everyone into the conversation to become more aware, more informed, and ultimately more empowered to protect themselves online.
I think that's a great point and a perfect takeaway from our deep dive today. Cybersecurity isn't just the responsibility of governments or tech companies. It's something we all need to be thinking about and taking part in. And organizations like TSEC are playing a huge role in making that possible.
They're really making cybersecurity less mysterious and more accessible to everyone, regardless of their technical background. And by doing that, they're helping to build a more resilient and secure digital future for all of us.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So that wraps up another deep dive. It's been a pleasure, as always, exploring this fascinating topic with you.
Likewise.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. We hope you found this exploration of team security insightful and thought-provoking. And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe online until next time.